Welcome to Solution Stack. I'm your host, Richard Rodriguez. First, I want to thank everybody for supporting this offshoot new platform of the IT Crowd. The response has been great. Really appreciate everybody's support on all the different platforms. To answer one of the biggest questions that we have gotten, the IT Crowd has not disappeared. Josh and I will be back in your face recording new episodes that will be coming up. So you haven't gotten rid of the two of us together. As always, tune in on any of your platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, etc. I'm really excited for today. We have the very first guest that we ever had on the IT Crowd, Jay Slaughter, has joined us again today. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you pronouncing my last name correctly, Jeff. Josh seems to think there's an H in there somewhere. It comes Slaughter, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be back, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Awesome. So, last time we talked to you, you were still with Tokio Marine. You're CIO for one of the business units, correct? Obviously we stay in contact. Besides just work, and life's taken a little bit of a turn, but and we'll get into that later. But this was 2.5 years ago that we got together,
give or take.
Yeah. So, obviously just in the span of that time, technology in general has kind of taken a number of different turns, and there's a lot of different developments that have gone on. As you were transitioning out of that role, how do you think that if you still had that role being the CIO, how do you think any of the newer technologies that are coming in would have affected maybe some of the decisions or some of the budgets that you would have kind of aimed towards that business?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and this is something it's not the newest thing around, but modernization, digital modernization, right? That's always a big deal. And when you look at a legacy corporation that's been around for a long time, there's lots of deprecated systems, old technology, and some instances AS400 still around, that sort of thing. So there was a lot of energy and focus on how do we take legacy systems, how do we modernize, right? How do we web enable, all this other kind of stuff. And a lot of spend and commitment was going into those things. I think the interesting thing too is, AI. That's the thing. Everyone sees this potential wealth of opportunity in what you can do to leverage AI. I think it still scares the heck out of people, right? I don't think we actually talked about this on the podcast a couple of years ago, where it's like, particularly, I was working for a very large commercial, especially insurance carrier. So their whole business is risk management, right? And you're talking about something that is potentially inherently risky, both in terms of how do you allow your employees to leverage that capability without exposing, intellectual property or PII or PCI or all that kind of stuff. Because once you start using that for business, you put data in there, it's out there, right? It's out there for consumption. It's potentially exposed. The other thing too is, setting aside kind of the risk aspect, how do you leverage the capability in terms of talking about insurance, right? Underwriting, making underwriting determinations, streamlining the entire underwriting, claims adjudication, all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, there's smarts and knowledge that can be built into it, and in theory, that can streamline some of these kind of what have been human-intensive processes for decades and decades. And people are still trying to solve for that. So I think that was kind of the question. That and modernization were the two things people were really noodling around as I was walking out the door over a year ago.
Yeah, I think the reality on the first part that you were saying is there's a lot of companies, the companies that we deal with are kind of one of three buckets. It's either they have no idea, how to use AI, and they're kind of just avoiding it, and I don't want to say they're hoping it goes away, but they're hoping it sort of evolves on its own.
Yeah.
Two, they've gotten into it a bit, so they've either gotten some licenses with ChatGPT or Copilot, and people are using it for simple things like, rewrite my emails, which you can obviously tell which ones have been written. But it's things like that, some simple editing, but they're not really scaling it to, the rest of the business to make a business impact. Or kind of three, they're down that road. They've got the data, they got it in place, but they get stuck in what I call kind of proof of concept hell. They've done 2 or 3 different proof of concepts. It looks great, but then again, it doesn't scale to the bigger business for a number of reasons, right?
Yep.
I think the first bucket to me from a risk perspective is the scariest one, because I tell people all the time, if you think your employees are not using AI with your data, you're crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they are, right? So you better put something in place. You need to put at least a policy in place. You need to put something in there.
Yep.
Whether you decide to fully go down that road or not, there needs to be guardrails in place.
Totally.
And I think people are just kind of, again, some people are just sticking their head in the sand, hoping that it goes away.
Yeah.
The modernization too, especially, there is still a lot of those projects that we get involved in. And what do you think with the insurance market? Because that's very different than oil and gas. The oil and gas, you got the peaks and the troughs. Everybody always needs insurance, right? So, what from a modernization standpoint, a budget standpoint, what would hold somebody back from making that? Is it the convenience? Is it just the size of the project that people saying, I'm okay where I'm at?
Yeah, and inertia is a hell of a thing, man. And so, I can talk to, without naming the specific company, I can talk to kind of the arrangement there and what was influencing decision making and willingness or lack thereof to commit spend to a modernization effort. And so it's a federated model, and you had basically lots of localized leadership and whatever, and these guys were very successful and they were well into their careers. And to them, to spend any sort of money, it's part of any technology transition. You've lived this, right? There's always this kind of productivity trough you get through as people get enough speed and all. And so you got these guys who've been around forever who are looking to cash out in 2 or 3 years, and like, not on my time, not on my dime. Right.
Yeah.
So, and this AS400 system is just humming right along, and I'm making a pile of money. So let the next guy deal with this stuff. And so it always gets kicked down to the down the road, right? Nobody wants to take the short-term hit. Again, it's not tech, right? I mean, certainly financial services, insurance are starting to recognize the benefit of the value, and they are starting to spend more on technology and all this sort of stuff. But it's not a industry with a culture of innovation, right? And again, their whole reason for being is risk mitigation. Anything that looks like change is potentially risk. So why would we invest in something that's potentially risky when what we're doing today currently works? Now, the downside of that is you are assuming the risk of, at some point, this thing is no longer going to be viable. So how long can you kick the can down the road before it becomes an imminent threat? And they're willing to fade that risk, at least to this point.
Yeah, no, we see that all the time,
Yep.
unfortunately. And there are times where it goes really sideways, and then they're in a world of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, kind of getting into your story a little bit. As we said, you moved on from your last position. You and I had a number of conversations over the course of about a year or so.
Yep.
You had a number of different options. I mean, there was definitely no lack of options and no lack of opportunities that were presented to you. So kind of talk about that and how you weighed different things and, decided on this new path.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share my story arc there. So about a year ago, I'm kind of a typical story. I'm 54 years of age now, but about a little over a year ago, 52 years old. I'd done the corporate thing forever. Most recently is kind of an executive in IT, working for financial services companies. And I'm sure you've heard the story a million times. I just kept waking up saying, survive the day, right? It's no joy, no happiness, but, it was being compensated really well. I've got family obligations, a mortgage, and 2 kids in college at the time, and, all this sort of stuff. And you're like, okay, that's great. And I'm doing my part financially to support my family, but I am miserable, right? And at some point, it was just like, it's just not worth it anymore. I'm blessed, and I've got a wife who's a professional, very successful professional woman. We managed to save a little bit of money to help fund the journey. And honestly, she's been my sugar mama for the last year as I figured this out. But I just woke up one day and I said, I can't do this anymore. And she said, okay, fine, I got you, but figure it out, and figure it out fast. So shout out to her, my lovely wife, Beth Ann. She's amazing. So I did it. Yeah, started on a journey. And you're right, I looked at all the things, right? I looked at franchise ownership, starting up something new, buying existing franchise, buying existing small businesses. I looked at pool servicing companies and a a boat dealer and maintenance company. I looked at in-home healthcare, senior care, all this sort of stuff, right? And just for a variety of reasons, sort of eliminated all of them. And it's interesting. I actually know people who have been very successful with insurance agency ownership. So I started looking into that, and there's multiple things that go into that consideration, right? You want it to be something that is potentially that there's some ROI to, and there's some financial benefit. You can grow, and then it becomes something that's maybe of a value to your family down the road. It was real important to have my family name on something, right? I've always wanted to be a small business owner, and got 2 adult children now. My daughter actually works for my agency now, so opportunity to hand off. I love the idea of slaughter family insurance, and there's 2 slaughters working there, the old man and the daughter. And anyway, so that's kind of a fun thing, doing something family oriented. But with respect to insurance agency ownership, right? I know everyone. The minute I said insurance, they're like, "Grony guy, not another insurance guy," right? And I get it, right? It's the sort of thing that no one wants to pay for. And my analogy is it's like tires on your car, right? You go in, whoever the tech mechanic guy, whatever, is like, you got 4 ball tires, right? And gosh, last thing I want to do is spend $1,200 on 4 new tires. But it's, the flip side of that coin is you don't want to do it, but you're humming down the road with everything of value in your life in that car, and one of these Houston, Texas monsoons that blows through, and you're on 4 bald tires. Do you really want that risk? And what do you stand to lose? So I do think that, there's value. I do believe in the mission of protecting people and the lives they built, right? I think, too, if you're doing it right, you need to be a trusted advisor to people. And that's something I kind of hang my hat on, because, I got a buddy who, he's got a bunch of business with a different carrier. And he's like, "Hey, I'll give you a chance to quote it." I think, great, I appreciate that. And I'm looking at it, and his auto liability, and this guy's got a lot of assets, right? His auto liability limits are 50, 150. And we can get into what that means if you want. But I'm like, look, at this point, you're my friend. I'm not selling you insurance. Your current insurance agent is not doing their job, because what that 5100 means is 5150 is, okay, let's just talk about the property protection on that deal. How many brand new cars can you buy that cost $50,000? And I'm not talking Porsches or Mercedes. One of these new Super Duty trucks, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. So if you got $50,000 in protection, and you total somebody else's car, your insurance is going to pay $50,000 and say goodbye, good luck, and you're paying for the rest. The first 2 numbers that's bodily injury on a third party. Meaning what? You get into a wreck, you put somebody in the hospital or kill them, and you've got a $50,000 in BI liability protection. Again, on $50,000, the insurance company is going to basically pay $50,000, and then the plaintiff's attorney, particularly if you kill that person, is going to go after all your stuff. So I look at it like, I'm not just trying to get more money out of this guy in particular, but I'm just trying to protect what you got, right? And you need to be maxed out because you got a lot to lose, and you need to consider an umbrella policy. And as I'm talking to you, it's like my agent never talked to me about any of this stuff, right? So, if you're doing your job right, you are protecting people, you are advising them. That's something I feel good about, right? It's something that I think is ultimately beneficial to my customers. We're very often friends in the family, and potentially beneficial to me as a business owner.
So, when you look at that evaluation process, I mean, if you said you looked at a bunch of different things, how did you sort of manage how you looked at risk with all those different businesses, right? Because again, there's risk in starting something from nothing. There's risk in taking over an existing franchise. There's, risk in investing in a franchise, but it still has a name.
Yep.
There's all those kinds of things that go into it. How did that play into your decision?
Yeah, so for me, I was fortunate in that I had a little bit of money to invest. I think, if you're the person who doesn't, then maybe you start something from scratch, right? A lot of times, if you're going the franchise route, the franchisor will help fund things to get you off the ground, and then you'll have a franchise fee obligation, maybe a loan obligation to them, but they help get you going. So I had the benefit of some money to invest. So I'm looking at buying something that is essentially an established book of business. So I did buy an existing agency, and the benefit there is it starts cash flowing day one, right? And it's because you've got renewal revenue coming in, and it comes in every single month, right? So that was one of the things. I wanted something that would start kind of paying a dividend. But that said, that renewal income, that residual income is not enough, because I didn't want to buy it and just maintain it. I wanted to grow it. So I'm continuing to invest out of my own pocket. But I did want something that provided a foundation of business, because there's two things, right? You got new prospect, new business, but you also have opportunity within your book of business too. So one of the things you look at is, hey, I've got a whole bunch of folks who are monoline auto, right? And then so you can sell within your book too. Because one of the two biggest expenses when you do these things are it's staffing and it's marketing, right? And marketing is prospecting, external business, folks who aren't currently with you, whatever. But there's opportunity at very low cost to, generate business and grow within your book. And it's looking at people like that, who, and it's a benefit to them too, because I'll be perfectly honest, if you just have auto with one insurance carrier, you're paying a heck of a lot more. But if you're willing to bundle your auto with your home or even a renter's policy or whatever, you're getting discounts. So it is potentially beneficial. And it's an opportunity for us to grow, again, within our book without having to spend a lot on marketing.
So, given your background, when you look at insurance, how are, I guess they're kind of a two-part question. Is the first part we'll go in is how you said people don't necessarily get the right advice from their current agent. You have to ask the question because it always comes up. Okay, well, I'm just gonna throw all my stuff into ChatGPT and have ChatGPT tell me which insurance I should get and what level, and what are the downsides of that?
I mean, you're trusting an algorithm to advise you on something that's very personal to you, right? And so the algorithm is as good as the body of knowledge that informs it, right? So I don't think it's a bad place to start, but at the end of the day, this is a human business, and I think you want to validate that. And my advice to anybody, whether you're interested in me quoting your business or not, is look at what you have in your life. I mean, there's so many agents, and I think this is where ethics and such come into the thing. They just want to land a sale, and so they're just looking to quote you the lowest thing possible. Because hey, if my price beats carrier ABC price, then I can land this. Yeah, but are you really taking care of your customer? And do you really want that business? Because okay, great, I couldn't beat it, but I can feel good about myself knowing that I'm not advising them on something where, again, if they're at fault in an accident, potentially ruinous to them financially. So that's the thing I would look at, because if you look at state minimum liability limits, it's embarrassingly low. It allows you to drive legally in Texas, but it's not protecting you. There are people I was one of these when I was 22 years old and just starting out. I had nothing to my name. So what do I care, right? I mean, I let the insurance pay it out. Unless somebody wants to sue me for nothing, great, they can get nothing. But you get to a point where you've built something in your life, you really need to look at how well covered you are. And back to my buddy who I was looking at, I'm like, I cannot believe that your agent, who has a fiduciary responsibility to let you walk out the door knowing kind of what your portfolio assets looks like. So again, back to your ChatGPT question. Yeah, I just think it's fine as a starting point, but make sure you sanity check it. Make sure you're comparing that against what you understand that the value of your accumulated assets and portfolio are worth, and then have a conversation as well. And if you've got an agent who really is looking out for your interests, they'll be honest with you and not just be trying to land your business by quoting you cheaply or just trying to, because that's the other side too is, hey, you don't need it, right? And if you don't need an umbrella policy, they shouldn't be trying to sell you an umbrella policy. For those who don't know, an umbrella policy, just whatever your baseline limits are, increases your liability limits, right? So as an example, my insurance, I've got on my auto 250, 500, 300. So bodily injury protection 250, individual 500 per in aggregate, and then 300 if I basically total somebody's car or do other property damage. But then I've got an umbrella on top of that, the increase in my liability limits by another $1 million, right? So, but I'm blessed in that, I've built a life, my wife and I built a life together that necessitates that kind of protection. But if you haven't, then your agent shouldn't be talking to you about you need $1 million umbrella policy, right?
So where do you see technology playing in other parts of the business, right? Because so many things now are shifting to, agentic AI, those kinds of things. Do you see that moving into the insurance business? Do you see, you know, what are some of the the pros are there, obviously, but what is some of the cons you see? Because as you said, it is, at the end of the day, it still is, a people business, with customer service, right?
Yep.
And how do you make sure that you can blend that technology in, but then still keep a personal touch?
Yeah, so I think it probably differs if you're talking about, and to be very clear, if you own an agency for a big name carrier, which I do, you do not work for the carrier. I'm an independent contractor, Slaughter Family Insurance. I happen to have a contract to sell insurance on behalf of a large carrier primarily, and then a bunch of smaller carriers where the large carrier doesn't have an appetite for a particular type of business, right? So really the question is, on the carrier side, I think they're the ones who are looking more into how to leverage AI for various purposes. Again, I think claims adjudication and underwriting are two big ones. As an agency owner, kind of less incentive to do that. We are very much sort of beholden to the carrier about the technologies we use and how we use them. And there are very strict rules of engagement and agency standards, they call them. And one of the things that can get my contract pulled immediately is if I do anything that looks like exposing personally identifiable information or PCI, things like that, for either a current customer or even a prospect. So that kind of creates a chilling effect on those who hold these contracts, and I consider myself lucky to be able to hold one of these contracts, to do things that look like that. So you see, agency side, it's, where technology comes in, people are using auto dialers and things because you're buying leads and all this kind of stuff. I don't personally do it because there's a gray area there. There's offshore telemarketing as well, where you feed lots of leads to people. And the Philippines is really hot right now with these for insurance. You feed them leads, but you got to be careful about how you do that too. Because again, if you get PI or PCI from a current carrier, customer, or prospect, then they'll pull your contract and you're done. So we kind of operate within the systems we have. Now I'm doing a lot in digital, social, right? That's the thing, but I'm promoting my own agency brand. I'm not promoting the carrier brand. They do enough for themselves. And honestly, the worst thing I could do is if I go out there and I promote the carrier name and somebody's like, hey, I like this guy and I like his story, and I'm going to go look for the carrier. And then 1,000 other guys who have contracts come up and the business doesn't come my way. If I focus on my agency name, my family agency name, then the business comes this way. And we actually have a mutual friend who's, for those who know their broader broadcast, who was involved in kind of the oil and gas side, Keith Jametsky. His daughter actually runs digital and social for me, and my daughter helps out with that as well. So that's kind of where I'm doing things from a technology perspective. I don't know. Don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, no, that was great. So kind of wrapping up. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. Where can they find you? Your website, your LinkedIn, anything to help the Slaughter family business out.
I appreciate that. So first of all, Slaughter Family Insurance. We are licensed to sell anywhere in the state of Texas. We can sell everything from home, auto, boat, golf cart, life. We do commercial, we do landlord, we do rental, there's not much we can't write. We've got, again, as part of this contract agreement, we've got to give the carrier first crack at the business, but there's a lot they just don't want to write. And at that point, it unlocks our ability to use like 20 other carriers to write all kinds of niche products or higher risk products, things like that. Best way to get a hold of me would be to call me at my office, 713-388-6543. Again, Slaughter Family Insurance. You'll find us online as well. Got a Facebook page, Instagram page, all that good stuff. So, look us up. We'd love to have a shot at your business. Again, the one thing I can commit to is we will operate ethically. We hang our hat on customer service and support. Reference this podcast. I've got a team of people who do it, but anything that comes from friends and family, and I consider Richard and the folks involved in this podcast as friends and family, I will personally handle your business. Once you reach out, I will give you my personal mobile phone as well. Love a shot at your business.
Awesome. Jake, thanks for coming back. We really appreciate you. Like I said, day one supporter. There we go. It's good to have you back. Good to see your journey, and we're all behind you, man.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate Richard and Josh, who's not here. Thanks for everything you guys have done to help support me as I've been on this path.
Awesome.
All right.
Again, thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode of Solution Stack. You can find us on any platform that you has your favorite podcast, where videocast, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Any questions, comments, they've been coming in. If there's any technology or any specific company you want to see on the Solution Stack, reach out to us, let us know, and we will get them on. Appreciate the support. Thanks.